From Deer Park Monastery, it's Meet the Monastics. I'm Brother Min An.
And I think I have a very healthy relationship with myself. Very healthy mental dialogue with myself. There were times I comforted myself. There were times I'm very firm with myself. Tell myself to stop thinking that way. And they help. This is why I kept on sharing the importance of self-love. Because by the end of the day, it is your self-love that helped me, that saved me, that keeps me going. Because if I continue to criticize myself or have excessive negative thoughts, I cannot do much. It's very tiring. So I think that is the reason why that helped me not to fall into burnout.
Each week I talk to a different monk or nun about their journey to monastic life and what inspires them now. Today, my conversation with Sister Boi Nghiem, Sister True Pearl, who ordained in 2005 at Plum Village, France at the age of 21. Sister Boi Nghiem and I have been working together a lot recently, mostly on mindfulness programming for the teens who come to our monasteries. I have to say I find her very easy to work with, engaging, responsible, and energetic. She's known in our community for her wholeheartedness and her compassion, especially for the BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ communities, as well as teenagers. And she's apparently good at ping pong, though we haven't had a chance to play yet. Sister Boi Nghiem has 3 elder blood sisters and a twin brother. One of her siblings is also a monastic in the Plum Village tradition, Sister Boi Nghiem, who was ordained 5 years ahead of her. After the war ended in 1975, their father spent 7 years in a communist re-education camp, and when he was released, he had to learn the life of a farmer. In Sister Boi Nghiem words, growing up in central Vietnam, her family was poor, but they had enough to eat. In an accident, her childhood house burned down, but the village helped her family to rebuild it. Also, she visited the temple growing up, and she was engaged in Buddhist youth programs, but that was largely a social interest for her. Nevertheless, those experiences and others planted in her the seeds of a life in community. When she was 11, her family immigrated to the U.S. and settled in Memphis, Tennessee, not far from the future site of Magnolia Grove Monastery, where she eventually would spend 14 years of her monastic life. She studied nursing in college, but she struggled socially and academically, and after breaking up with her boyfriend, she attended a meditation retreat for the first time. Here's the interview.
I just recently broke up with my boyfriend. So I was very, very sad. It was my first experience of heartbreak. So can you imagine, like a 17-year-old being in love for the first time, experience heartbreak? It was tough. But then I went to Green Mountain, and in the Dharma sharing group, I listened to people's sharing of their suffering and difficulties. And I thought to myself, my suffering is nothing. And I came home like a new person. Something changed inside. That's why these days when people come to attend a retreat and they feel something different is happening inside, I could relate to them. Yeah. And I think there, and then the next year I went to Deer Park. And then I feel like, spirituality is something that's missing in my life. Yeah.
So you spent some time at Deer Park. How long did you spend at Deer Park before going to Plum Village?
Just 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it was like once you spent that time at Deer Park, you felt pretty sure about your path at that point to become a monastic. And then you hopped on a plane to France.
At that time, I didn't think about becoming a monastic. I feel like I want to change university,
Yeah.
Because if I share with my family, I wanted to become monastics, it might be scary for them. So I just had enough money to buy one-way ticket. I did not ask my parents for any money. I was working part-time, a student working part-time. And I remember the ticket was like $600 or $700. And I bought the ticket, I got my passport, and then I invited my family to sit down one night, and I share everything. I share that, just imagine that I'm going to a different university.
Do you think that they struggled more or less because Sister Nghiem had already become a nun?
I think they struggle a bit more. They wanted me to finish my college years first because they're afraid if I don't make it as a monastic, then I don't have a diploma in my hand, and it might be difficult for my future. Yeah. But, they did not support me, but they did not disagree or forbid me. So I'm very grateful to that from my parents. Yeah.
This is a very common response from parents. We don't support, but we accept. That's sometimes all we can ask for.
Yeah. And never once they told me to come home or to abandon this life.
Yeah.
Yeah. They gave me the freedom. Growing up, my parents always gave me the freedom to make choices in my life. And they never say that I have to do this, I have to be this or to be that. So I have that autonomy in my life, and I think it helped me to be independent in some ways and to be responsible for my own decision and action.
Beautiful. So can you tell us a little bit about being a novice in Plum Village?
I was also very fortunate to spend time with many wonderful sisters. Most of them were elder in age, like 10 years older than me. So they're very mature in their way of living, in their thoughts, and also in how they live their life. And it's nice to be the youngest one, always the youngest one amongst them. I had a very, very peaceful childhood as before becoming a nun, and also during my novice years. I remember when Thay went to Vietnam in 2005, there was like very small group of sisters staying behind. And we were there for one another, and, we helped to build the greenhouse in Lower Hamlet. And many of us were young, but there was this elder sister, and she was very solid and caring for the rest of us. I was quite well behaved as a novice. Sister Boi Nghiem was my mentor. And her compassion, her motherly love made it very pleasant and comfortable for me. And she guided me through my novice years. We all love her. And I look up to her. Just the image of her every morning after sitting meditation. She would stand up, walk peacefully each sit of the sisters that did not go to sitting meditation to see who did not show up. And then perhaps she would visit them or she would not visit them, but just to acknowledge that they're not there. And the way that she did it was very peaceful and compassionate. So images like that really nourish my novicehood. And also to see other sisters build sisterhood among other sisters, with other sisters. Like Sister Thanh Nghiem, Sister Thi Nghiem, and Sister Cung Nghiem. The sisterhood was very beautiful. It contains friendship. It contains respect. It contains, being natural. And most importantly, the love for the practice. So I felt very lucky to spend time with the sisters who had great love for the practice. And that impacted me, because I knew that I need to surround myself with positive and dedicated sisters who walk on this path just for me to benefit and to grow. Yeah, and being Thay's attendant for some time to see the other side of Thay that I did not see, like his humor. His humor was one. And also how he would welcome the guests or how he interact with them. Just small moments like that. I could see this is the teaching. This can be a Dharma talk. Or at times when I was very sleepy while Thay was giving Dharma talk and I was his attendant. As attendant, we have to sit in the front row. And our role is to be attentive to see if, Thay needs our help with anything. But I was sleepy, like, the whole time. It was hot in the Assembly of Stars Meditation Hall. 21-day retreat, June. Like, so many people. It was very difficult to stay awake.
Thay also has a very calming voice,
I know. And I remember one time before leaving Lower Hamlet, he looked at me and he say, "My child, please go to sleep early at night." Yeah, and, to be able to be Thay's attendant was very memorable. I wish that all of the monastics would have that opportunity. Yeah.
So now you've been a nun for 19 years?
Almost 18 years and a half.
Wow. You spent your novice years at Plum Village, but then you spent now the majority of your monastic life you spent at Magnolia Grove. I know it's kind of impossible to sum up 14 years, but what do you feel like was why did you want to go to that center? And then what was the kind of arc of those 14 years? And why now have you chosen to come to a new center here to Deer Park?
So Magnolia Grove Monastery is in Mississippi. I came there in April of 2010. And Prajna, we no longer could stay in Prajna. September 2009.
Prajna was our center in Vietnam, where we had about 400 young monks and nuns, and ultimately we had to close that center because of difficulties with the government.
Exactly. And so from September to March, our 3 centers in the U.S., or at that time, Blue Cliff and Deer Park, they started to do paperwork to sponsor these monastics over from Thailand. And the lay friends, the Vietnamese lay friends, donated Magnolia Grove Monastery to Plum Village in 2002 or 3. So for 7 years, they maintained the center without the presence of monastics. And after Prajna, Thay decided that we need to send monastics over these centers. And the first group of sisters, there were only 3 or 4 who had U.S. citizenship to come to Magnolia. And I came in April. And I thought to myself, in America, every time there's something new, progressive, like meditation, mindfulness, New York and California will be the first states to try it out. But Mississippi, no, nobody would thought about it. And I thought of the lay friends who founded the center. So many hearts, so much energy put into that. And I wanted to express my gratitude. So gratitude was the big reason why I went to Magnolia Grove Monastery. And the second reason was I wanted to offer my small hands in bringing mindfulness and meditation to the South. And over the years, I saw more and more people from different states coming to Magnolia, and that made me so happy. And I feel like, these two aspirations of mine were somewhat fulfilled. And Magnolia Grove Monastery helped me to grow as a person, mature as a practitioner, and trained me as a Dharma teacher, and also guided me in becoming a better daughter to my parents. And because there were so few monastics that could speak English, so I had to practice to give teachings at a very young age, even before I was a Dharma teacher. And in a way, now looking back, those moments were very precious. It was training. They were training me. And that's what I love about my time at Magnolia. It was a small Sangha, and friends that came, I knew them on a personal level. I learned a lot. And also, when my mom was diagnosed with colon cancer in July 2010, 3 months after my stay there, I went home. Took time to go home and be there with my mom. And that, the 4 years with being there with my mom, they were like gifts for me.
You were living at her with her in Memphis for those 4 years. Wow.
Back and forth.
Okay. Because Memphis is not so far from Magnolia.
Right, just 1 hour. So it depends how her health was. Let's say the first year of her cancer diagnosis, she needed to go to chemotherapy quite often. So I would go home for 1 whole month, come back to the monastery for 1 week, and then would go back home for 2 weeks. So that time change. There was a period where on the weekdays I went home, and on Sunday I would drive to Magnolia for the day of mindfulness. And in the afternoon, I would teach English to the monastics. And at the same time, I had to take care of my health. And 2011, Thay came to Magnolia during the U.S. tour trip. And at the time, we didn't have a meditation hall. And 1,000 people registered. I helped in the office. I helped to buy kitchen supplies, rent the tents, the chairs, the tables. At the same time, I helped my mom. And back then, we didn't have online registration. People fill the registration form on the paper, send to the monastery. So another sister and I, we would type all this information into Microsoft Excel, scan every check they sent. And I remember there were times when every time I lay on my bed for nap, the phone would ring. And I just didn't have the heart not to get up. So I would get up and answer the phone call. We didn't have the office. I was working in the sister's residence, and the phone was in the common room. And every time, this thought of like, why are people calling right now? And then another thought would come up. I'm just so happy they're phoning us. Here we're trying different ways for people to know about this retreat. And now they're emailing us, they're calling us, and you're complaining. Oh, come on, give me a break. So, I had to have that dialogue with myself. It was the first big retreat at Magnolia with Thay. And I was so happy now looking back to witness and experience all of that. I was only 26 at that time. And that really helped to strengthen my beginner's mind, my bodhicitta. Yeah, so put me in the office right now, it's a piece of cake. because back then
Yeah.
it was very difficult. Yeah.
And so what were some other lessons that you feel like you took from your time at Magnolia before ultimately now in the last year making the decision to come to Deer Park?
I think the first group of monastics that came to Magnolia, how beautiful their hearts were.
Mm.
It was right after Bát Nhã, so they experienced a lot of trauma. They were young. And the first 3 years of Magnolia, we did a lot of buildings, construction work. But we was very diligent in our practice. We still kept the sitting meditation, walking meditation, and there was a lot of support. I remember there was some really hot summer days, and we built the sisters' residence. The brothers and the sisters worked together. And whenever we had break, we would sit and enjoy apples. Sister Boi Nghiem would make delicious like juice. And we sat just on the grass, found a shaded spot, hanging out, laughing, enjoy that cool fruits or juice, and continue with our work. And it was like a Sangha effort. And we knew that doing this is not only for ourselves, but also for the future monastics that would come to Magnolia. We put so much energy and time in building these buildings. There were nights we didn't stop until like 9. So to live in a place where, with our own hands, we build these buildings, were very special. Yeah. It was a lot of work. And we had so many, dedicated friends showing us how to do it. Because none of the monastics we had experience with this. Yeah. So this group of dedicated friends with monastics come together, working together. And just by working together, we had many beautiful shared memories, and that bonded the love and the care. Those were golden times for me at Magnolia. Yeah.
And your decision to come to Deer Park?
I wanted to leave Magnolia in 2007 to mark 7 years of my stay there. And at that time, my mom passed away for 3 years already. So I thought that...
17, huh?
Yeah, 17.
Yeah.
She passed away in 2014. And I thought now is a good time to leave Magnolia because we had enough English-speaking sisters. But then in the meeting, some sisters say that, we would like to have you back. See, I wrote my letter to request. But I also reminded myself to be open, whatever decision that would take place in the meeting. So after listening to some of the sisters share their feelings, so I decided that, okay, I will go to Plum Village for 3 months, to Thailand for 1 year, and then I will write a letter back to Magnolia to ask the sisters if there's a need for me to return. If there's no need, then I would like to go to Blue Cliff. If there's a need, I will return to Magnolia. So the sisters reply, say that please return to Magnolia. So I returned in May 2019. And, when I returned to Magnolia at that time, I told myself that I would give myself 4-year visa because I'm a U.S. citizen, so I don't really have a visa. Unlike our monastic siblings with Vietnamese passport. But I told myself I would give myself a 4-year visa. And I wanted something new before I turned 40. So that's why I chose Deer Park. And right after the murder of George Floyd in 2020,
I believe.
I started to learn more about the racial discrimination, the social injustice in the United States, and learn more about how Asian people were treated in the early days when the Japanese and the Chinese first came to the U.S., and also the anti-Asian attack during COVID. So I had another horizon open in front of me to learn about this topic. And I felt, wow, this is another part of the United States I'm not aware of. And I felt like coming to California, I would be able to learn a lot. So coming here with only one purpose is to learn, to be open to learn from my monastic siblings, from the lay friends that come, not to serve or to help. Because I think wherever we go, we cannot escape the serving and the helping. But I want to keep my beginner's mind alive, my compassion alive. So I really want to learn. To learn here is not just to read books, but to listen to people's life experiences. Yeah. And 7 months here have been very powerful for me. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, as I see it, you are a very outward-facing member of our sangha, and I'm feeling like I understand you better hearing you talk about this love of people that you always had, also growing up in a very kind of social environment in Vietnam. And I'm wondering, if you can talk a bit more about, in particular, your relationship to the BIPOC friends who come to the monastery. I feel like actually you have kind of 3 areas of focus in my time knowing you anyway, in terms of sangha building. And
okay, let's see if you predict it correctly. Come on, tell me.
Well, I mean, in terms of interfacing with lay friends who come to the monastery, I feel like you're very active in terms of growing the BIPOC sangha and also the LGBTQIA plus community, and also teenagers.
You are correct. I have a soft spot for these 3 groups.
Yeah. So, I wonder, maybe we can talk about each one a little bit individually. And you mentioned the murder of George Floyd being quite a important event for you that kind of helped you become, I don't know, maybe more interested or, put more energy into that. And in particular, living in Mississippi at that time, I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that time and your coming to kind of take that on in terms of your how it relates to your aspiration, why you feel it's meaningful for you.
So let's start with the teenager.
Okay, all right, okay? Teenagers.
Yeah. In the monastery, we often talk about the 5-year-old child, the wounded child. And it's very hard for me to relate to the 5-year-old child because my childhood was very peaceful. But my teenage years, again, I experienced that heartbreak and falling in love. So I had that wounded teenager. Compared to other people, my suffering was very minuscule, so small. But it was very big for me. And then seeing my nibblings, my nieces and nephews, experience their teenage years. There were times they were very frustrated with their parents, addicted to playing video games, harming themselves, unable to communicate with their parents because not only the language barrier, but also, not understanding one another. And I was there for my nibblings during their teenage years. Of course, I share with them many things about mindfulness, but, sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. But I thought I'm just going to plant the seeds. And during my time at Magnolia, the children of the aunties and uncles, they came to the monastery when they were children. And then they turn to teenage years. And they also suffer. And listening to other teenagers share their suffering, their trauma, the sexual abuse they experienced when they were young. And I feel like, wow, this is a group that I can give my love, energy, and time to. And with the mental health crisis in young people, especially teenagers, and the social media, and how that affect the anxiety, the depression, suicide ideation, all that add in, I'm like, how can I ignore them? How can I not love them? It was scary for me to be a teenager. And at that time, I didn't have social media. I didn't experience bullying at school, but it was scary. And now imagine the teenagers these days. Social media, cyberbullying, bullying at school, with the mental health crisis. It's just that awareness of suffering made my compassion stronger. That's it. And it's fun to be with teenagers. They're so real. I mean, yeah, they can scare you with a cold face, with a hoodie on, walking around and send this message, don't talk to me or don't approach me. But inside of them, they're very fragile, vulnerable, and have a very soft heart. Not many people listen to them or believe in what they are sharing. And I want to be someone that they can share. They can open, they can cry, they can hug. They can feel that, there are people in their lives that love them. And because I wanted all of this for my nibblings. And I dedicate this love to my parents, to my nibblings, hoping that if one day they suffer, there will be someone that help them. Just like right now, I'm helping these teenagers. I love my afternoon nap. But I remember one day, I think it was on a Saturday, I saw this family, the dad and 2 young sons came to the monastery. And I was surprised because they usually just come on Sunday. So after lunch, this teenager wanted to talk to me. I think by that time, he's already a college student, 2nd year. But I knew him since he was 10 years old. And he shared his struggles, how his mom kicked him out of the house because he stayed up late, really late at night to play video games. For so many nights like that, and his mom couldn't stand him continue doing that. And he cried like a baby. And I said, I would never say no to a teenager who needed a listening ears after lunch. Just to be there to listen and comfort in any way that I could. For the LGBTQIA plus community, before I had many wrong perceptions about this beloved community, I was surrounded by people, lay and monastics, some monastics, saying that people who are gay, they have some sort of disease. If you are close to them, it's contagious. So stay away from them. And this planted in my head. I didn't hear anyone say anything positive about our friends in the LGBTQIA+ community. And so naturally, my mind was affected. I also had wrong perceptions about them. Until we had a friend from California came to Magnolia Grove Monastery to stay for 6 months as a long term. At first, I was very scared and afraid. What if she happened to fall in love with another sister? But then, after she stayed there for some time, I asked her questions about her life. Just the process of her coming out to her family, it was a struggle. And how she dealt with her depression and few times harmed herself. Then again, awareness of the suffering, my compassion grew. And I knew that I have so much to learn. So much to learn. And she shared with me, Sister Boi Nghiem, you stay here with 10 other monks. Do you have attraction to any monk? And I say, no, right at this moment, no. So please don't think that I myself would have attraction to all the female that I meet. That's not the case. So that was a revelation for me. And during her stay there, because of how she lived so beautifully and wholeheartedly in the community, that I no longer focus on her sexual orientation. I focus on her beauty. And I consider her as my first teacher to help me understand our friends in the LGBTQIA+ community. And from there, through having conversation with other friends, and they felt comfortable to share with me their sexual orientation or gender identity, I listened to more stories. And one time, I read a research asking friends in the LGBTQIA+ community, where do you find the most support? Where do you find the least support? The most support they find is on the internet. That's where they are very comfortable to share about their feelings. The least place that they find this most support is religious organization. So what does that tell me? I don't want religious organization to be the least place of support for our friends in the LGBTQIA+ community. So I need to change. I can do something. And read the statistics of how these friends have high rate of depression and suicide. This also made me think differently about our friends. And that's the power of being aware of the suffering, which is the 6th mindfulness training in the 14 mindfulness trainings in the order of interbeing. Before, whenever we recited the 14 mindfulness trainings, I didn't really feel much. It was just a recitation ceremony. But after being aware of the social injustice and the suffering of our friends in the marginalized groups, I really felt it more. Yeah. And I really felt like, reciting these trainings are reminders for me. And each word in the training are like bells of mindfulness. They're no longer just words. They are reminders for me of what I can do, of what I need to avoid, to really be a beautiful continuation of Thay. And then the BIPOC community. I remember when I was in high school, for the history class, I did a research on the students that went to Little Rock High School, the first group of Black students that went there, and how the army was there, or the marshals were there to protect them. But again, it was a class assignment, just to get it over with. And being in Mississippi, I was in the monastery most of the time. And it was very rare for us to go to different parts in Mississippi to share the mindfulness practice. Because, we only go to places that invite us. And I went to a school that was very diverse, the most diverse school in Tennessee. I had Black friends, friends from the Middle East, Asian, white, and I loved that. But it was after the murder of George Floyd that I really understood more clearly the harm, the danger of racism. I did not experience much racism in my life because I stayed in the monastery a lot. And we are like this, in this protected net. And friends come to us are very loving. And we are the host. They are the guest. So they respect us. They do what we ask them to do. And I thought that, it would be like that for many Asian people living in the U.S., but it's not. And to see, people marching, holding signs, Black Lives Matter, Asian, white, Latinx, indigenous people holding signs, Black Lives Matter, and not just for Black people. I was very moved. I thought to myself, if Vietnamese people were treated like Black people, and we have Black people hold up signs, Vietnamese lives matter, how would I feel? Very supported. And then I started to research more and read about innocent lives being killed by the police. A whole list. Listening to more stories, reading more books, and looking at our retreats. How come we don't have so many Black people come? Before I thought, I'm just happy that people come to our retreat. We don't discriminate. Yeah, I'm just happy we have 300 people come to our retreat. But then, as I became more aware and listening to other friends shared. They invite us, they challenge us by asking the question, how come on retreats we don't have many Black people? And we are in a country that is very diverse. So what are we doing wrong, And what can we do? And so I started to research and learn, share with my other monastic siblings. Some are interested, some are not interested, but I knew this is the path I want to take. Even those who are interested are very, very small, but I know that they're there, and they are my elders. So I take refuge in their commitment to help make our community more diverse. And it's still a relatively new topic for me. And I was not aware of the racism the Chinese and the Japanese people faced in the 1800s when they first came to the U.S. And I thought that in the United States, racism maybe only Black people face. But then COVID happened, the killing of 6 Asian women in Atlanta. I remember after that event, I did walking meditation. And I was like calling for help, screaming for help silently in my head, saying, pastors, ministers, fathers, nuns, Buddhist nuns, Buddhist monks, please help. And goosebumps was like flowing in my whole body as I walk from the dining hall to the street at Magnolia Grove Monastery and just shed tears. I was alone. For the first time in my life, I walk alone, thinking about the killing of these innocent people, and I shed tears. With George Floyd, I did not shed tears. But with these 6 Asian women, I shed tears. I didn't know who they were. But knowing that they're Asian, for some reason, I connected. And that's when I realized, the reason why we don't have many Black people in our retreat is when one Black person comes, they don't see any other Black people. And then I thought to myself, imagine if I go to a place and I see someone who's Asian. Somehow I would connect to them. I would feel safe. I would go up and say hello because they look like me. And then that's when I found out why. And then Magnolia organized the first BIPOC retreat in 2022. I was on the organizing team with Boi Nghiem, Sister Boi Nghiem, and a group of 3 dedicated friends. We had 22 Zoom meetings for the retreat, and I learned a lot. It was a challenging retreat to organize and very empowering because we had to look into areas that perhaps we didn't have to worry if we organized a family retreat. And also, I'm BIPOC. I'm a person of color. Before, I just thought I'm Vietnamese. But then when I realized I'm also BIPOC, I need to be aware of the suffering of my community to help or to heal and to stop the harm. If I'm not careful, I would just, this tendency of spiritual bypass or sharing about interbeing in a way that is not very relevant and can cause more harm to our friends in the BIPOC community. Yeah. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about. And I know that I can speak to my nibblings about this topic, and we're on the same page. And they taught me a lot. And I remember one time my eldest niece shared with me that I was very frustrated at work today. And I say, what happened? A customer came up and say, your English is very good. And with my ignorance, I told her, V, that's a compliment. Why are you mad at this customer? And she say, Auntie, that's microaggression. Because this person thinks that Asian people can't speak English. So when she heard me speak English, well, she complimented. But it's not a compliment. It's microaggression. And I started to read more stories on the common questions that Asian people have to hear. Where are you from? No, where are you really from? And then I remember last year when we went to Harvard, Sister Boi Nghiem and I, we were walking at the park. And this friend came up and asked, before asking what our names were, right away she asked, where are you from? And I told her, I'm from America. Then I understood, the challenges that Asian people face in America, always being treated as other, as foreigner, when they were born in the U.S. Returning to Asia, the relatives would consider them as American. But coming to America, many people see them as Asian or othered. So it's difficult. And it's through this awareness that I started to be more sensitive and to see signs of microaggression more easily. Before, I would know. So that's why in English there's this sentence that says, ignorance is bliss. But I think those days are gone for me. Yeah.
I'm wondering about, I want to say burnout, but I feel like we use the term burnout in our community a little bit too glibly. It's kind of this catch-all for when you suffer, even though you're doing something, ostensibly noble. So I'm wondering, if you've experienced something like that, have you, because you have these people in our community that you feel a lot of compassion for, and you put a lot of energy into taking care of them, helping them to be happy, comfortable at the monastery. So I'm just wondering if you've gone through some difficulty with that, if that's caused you difficulty, and if so, how have you been able to practice with that?
Yeah, thank you for this question. When we talk about teenagers, friends in the LGBTQIA plus community or BIPOC, many people think they are troublemakers. They cause a lot of problems. And I'm very aware of that. And I make sure that when I help these friends, or when I am present for them, I'm deeply nourished and not tired. And organizing the BIPOC retreat is an example for that. It was challenging because of the logistics, communicating with other monastics. As Vietnamese, we live in a homogeneous country, so racism is something we don't face. But coming to the U.S. is a reality that we have to learn, especially when we organize a BIPOC retreat. And so while organizing the retreat, I attended the Sangha schedule, make myself present for the sisters, continue to learn about the struggles of BIPOC friends, take care of my health, and be happy. And if I experience burnout or be lazy, not wholehearted, then there will be monastics in the community blame the BIPOC community for that. I don't want that to happen. Because throughout their whole life, the BIPOC community has been treated unfairly. And everything that I did or I'm doing is out of compassion. It's not out of responsibility. And that's what sustained me. I do what I love, and I love what I do. So this positive mindset that I have has been there with me, I think, since I was very young. For example, when I went home to take care of my mom, I was like the main caretaker. I took her to chemotherapy sessions, radiation, acupuncture, her medications, contact the doctors, the insurance company. I did all that by myself. And I cook, I wash up, I went to grocery shopping, all by myself. Because my other sisters, they had their own family, my brother too, and my dad was working at that time. Sister Boi Nghiem was at Blue Cliff, and then after that she came home to help. And there was one day, this voice inside say, "Oh, I'm so tired." And then I reply back, "You're tired? The person that is tired right now is Mom. She hardly has any strength after her chemo session. You're 26. You can walk. You can run. You're able to have good night's sleep, and you're tired. Check again." And then after that, I never say that sentence to myself again. And it's true. The cancer cell was eating her up. All these chemo drugs were inside her body. She had diarrhea, couldn't urinate. And I'm here complaining, I'm tired. And I think I have a very healthy relationship with myself. Very healthy mental dialogue with myself. There were times I comforted myself. There were times I'm very firm with myself, tell myself to stop thinking that way. And they help. This is why I kept on sharing the importance of self-love. Because by the end of the day, it is the self-love that helped me, that saved me, that keeps me going. Because if I continue to criticize myself or have excessive negative thoughts, I cannot do much. It's very tiring. So I think that is the reason why that helped me not to fall into burnout. I often think about the benefit of other people. And it gives me joy. And then I research about kindness and compassion, how that affects physical health and mental health. And they say that when we are kind, we live longer. Our heart is healthier. Our immune system is stronger. And that gave me more faith to be kind. So this self-love and this positive mindset, and always be grateful. Grateful to Thầy, to the Sangha, to my parents, and also to myself. I'm deeply grateful to myself. And I always thought of like this. The hard work has been done. I remember one time in Thailand for the wake-up retreat, I was on the organizing team. And the organizing team proposed that I would give a Dharma talk, the second Dharma talk of the retreat, on the topic of happiness. And that was like 3 weeks before the retreat. So I watched interviews, documentaries, read research on the power of being happy, Thay's books, and also practice cultivating happiness in myself. And this brother, he would talk about the 4 nutriments on the first day of the retreat. I sat there and I listened to his Dharma talk. And all he spoke about was happiness. He did not say anything about the 4 nutriments. And the first 30 minutes, I was at peace. But then 1 hour passed by, my heart rate was like increasing. And I felt very nervous in my body. At the end of the Dharma talk, he said, tomorrow, Sister Boi Nghiem will talk about the 4 nutriments. Can you imagine what I had to go through? It was my first Dharma talk in Thailand for 300 friends and 200 monastics. I was having like anxiety attack for the first time in my life. And suddenly, I have a great love for music. And suddenly, the song by Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey came. There can be miracles when you believe. I told myself, I can do this. Even though it was very scary, but I kept singing that song over and over in my head. I wasn't singing, breathing in, breathing out. I had to take care of my mental formations to prepare a new Dharma talk. And not to be so angry with his brother. And then like so many thoughts came up. Like, oh, this is so hard. This is very difficult. And then another thought came up. This is difficult. The Buddha spent 6 years looking for one teacher to another teacher. Sat under the Bodhi tree for 49 days. Thầy went through the Vietnam War, came to the U.S., all by himself to call for peace. And this is difficult. The hard work has been done. The Buddha found the path. Thay's teachings are available. And this is difficult. I am going to be the last person to manifest. Causes and conditions are not sufficient for this Dharma talk to manifest. I am not the only condition, but I am the last condition. And it's up to me to make it beautiful or not. So that gave me confidence and keep my compassion alive. And after that, I wasn't angry at the monk anymore because I was able to solve that difficulty within myself. And the next day, he walked across from me and he said, "Good job." So again, it's the healthy mental dialogue that I have with myself and believe in myself and ask for help. I share with the sisters my worry, my disappointment, and they help me.
Wow. I think just one aspect we haven't quite touched on is just like basic practice. I sort of feel like I'm wondering, what role you feel your basic practice, mindful breathing, mindful walking, plays in all of this. I mean, there's so much here, right? And I think in Plum Village, we have this fairly unique monastic relationship to service, and we do a lot of service. So, how have you managed to maintain your personal practice, and what role does it play in your service?
I love to come back to my breathing. And we're very fortunate to have different sounds of the bell in the monastery to remind us. And to me, that's not enough. Because I notice myself, sometimes I follow, sometimes I don't. Right? You seem to agree too. Even though physically I stop, but my mind is also very noisy in moments like that. And so throughout the whole day, I keep telling myself to come back to my breathing, just silently, in meetings, walking from one place to another. I consider my breathing as my lover and as my best friend. I share this story many times. When I was in love, I would often think about my boyfriend, like 24/7. But then, and if I didn't think of him for like 2 minutes, I felt so guilty. I felt like I'm not being faithful. But then after becoming a nun, Thay spoke a lot about the breathing. And then everywhere I go, I would just hear the word breathing a lot. So every time someone say the word breathing, I would come back to my breathing. That's one way to help me. And I see that it really helps my mind to slow down and to relax my body. This sounds really cliche, right? Because we hear so often. But, it's something that I have to invite myself to come back often. To feel the breathing and to breathe from the abdomen, not from the chest. And this helps me to be able to live in the present moment. So the practice of dwelling happily in the present moment is very close to my heart. And I see that it helps me not to have so much worries and stress. Yes, I know I have to give a Dharma talk in the upcoming BIPOC retreat. I know I will go to Alaska in August, but I'm very relaxed. And at the same time, I love to hear the birds singing. Because I always remember this story, Sister Boi Nghiem, the abbess of Lower Hamlet, shared that every time she walked from her hut to the meditation hall or to Purple Cloud or to dining hall, she would ask herself, am I listening to the birds singing? And if the answer is no, it means that her mind is thinking about something else. So I love to listen to the birds singing as a way to help me to come back to the present moment and to be present for my breathing. And I'm not very calm and peaceful like other monastics. So if you meet me, you would not feel that feelings. You wouldn't experience that peace and this calmness. You would feel more like the happiness or the joy or perhaps excitement. And I'm aware of what I lack and what I can improve. So in moments when I know I have enough time to walk from one place to another, I often ask myself, what's the rush? Just that question only is a reminder for me to really kiss the earth with my feet. And there's no need to rush. And watering good seeds in myself. We listen to Dharma talks, I think twice a week. But that's not enough for me to water good seeds in my consciousness. So my aspiration for this year is to water positive seeds in myself. For example, in the past, whenever I ate, I would just think meaninglessly. But this year, I want to water good seeds when I have 3 meals a day. The awareness is there, the aspiration is there. So I keep reminding myself, or go to seed meditation. I'm going to water good seeds in my consciousness. I'm not going to solve problems. I'm just going to tell myself how much I love myself. I'm going to express gratitude to the different people in my life. So watering good seeds. Yeah.
And what's the connection, do you think, between that and the work that you're doing for these other communities, like these lay communities?
Yeah, I think there's a deep connection between this. Because when the good seeds are watered in me, when I look at people, the first thing I see is they are Buddha to be. They have the potential to be the Buddha. And I practice like the Bodhisattva Sadapariputta, never disparaging anyone but they meet. And when I see that this mind is trainable because of the neuroplasticity, I also have faith in other people too. it's difficult to see that with someone you have difficult relationship with, right? But again, I keep coming back to remind myself. And I have to start that with myself, with my family members. It's very easy to see the goodness in our friends that come to the retreat, because they're very sweet and they only stay with us for a week. Mm-hmm. But with my dad, it's different. It's more difficult to see the good seeds in him, because I'm able to know his negative habits, things that we disagree with. But he's my dad. And so when I talk to him, I also water good seeds in myself and in him by showing him my care, my concern. And whenever he asks me to help him with something, I would say yes. Just like even though he knows that I disagree with him on some things, but every time I ask him for help, he always says yes. And that's a teaching that my dad is giving me. To say yes when people suffer and they need help. But if you ask me for my help after lunch, I have to say no. I want people to know I'm a napping nun and a grateful nun. So from 1:30 to 3, please don't come to me with your suffering. Yeah, you can come to me before and after that, and I will be there for you. I will really be there for you. And that's also an act of self-love.
Yeah.
To take care of myself, to recharge my energy. I can't just give. I have to rest and practice resting very well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we know your terms. We'll avoid asking for anything after lunch. Yeah, just one last question. I really want to ask you what advice you would have for someone who is considering monastic life, and especially someone who's trying to decide between monastic life and a life of nursing or service or something like that.
Indecisiveness is very tiring. And sometimes we need to give our indecisiveness an expiration date. Because I went through that for like a whole month. And it made me so tired. What I love about monastic life is I have time to do what I love. And I have time to do what I love and to love what I do. If people ask me, why am I still monastic? My reply would be just this one sentence. I have time to do what I love, and I have time to love what I do. And here it's not just about helping other people, but to also know myself, discover myself. Because I think it's very interesting to know about all these famous people, peace activists, celebrities. But to know oneself, to know our thoughts pattern, to comfort ourselves in times of difficulties, in times we are alone, in times we are lonely, is very healing. That's what we have a chance to do as monastic, and also to be in a community with like-minded people. Just imagine this. To be in a place where no one smokes, no one drinks, no one steals, live a celibate life, and no one drinks. To live in a place where no one walks around with headphones on these days is heaven for me. Added to that, we have the teachings of the Buddha. And Thay brought these teachings and make them so relevant and adaptable to today's needs. Added to that, we can help people. And we don't have to go anywhere far. People come to us. We don't have to go knock on their door. Do you need my help? They come to us to say, I suffer, please help. Added to that, we care greatly about the environment by having a vegetarian and vegan diet. Imagine a community of 65 monastics, and we have less than 10 cars. If these 65 people are living out there, there will be 65 cars. So what more are we looking for? If we're looking for money, then this is not the place. If we're looking for fame, definitely it's not a place. But if we are looking for healing, for helping, then this is a place. To be a healthcare professional, to be a monastic, what is our heart's calling? And we have the 5-year program. And consider these 5 years as like a university years, where we practice abstinence. No smoking, no drinking, no sex. Taking care of ourselves, being in a very protected and safe environment. And at the same time, we are also aware of the challenges that as monastic we face. It's not easy to be celibate. And the monastics are not angels from above falling down, so please don't idolize the monastics and think that we don't make mistakes. We are still practitioners. There are habits that we were able to transform. There are habits we haven't been able to transform. And there are new habits that we created for ourselves as monastics. But as long as we are there to support one another, to shine light on one another with compassion and with support, we can go very far. I never doubted my decision or my monastic life, and I'm deeply grateful. And once we decided to do something, no regret. No regret. Because anything that happens, I myself consider them as my teacher and as an opportunity to learn. And one great thing about being a monastic in the Plum British community is that you always have your siblings with you. You're never alone. They will always be there. There will always be someone there to listen and to help if we open our heart and willing to receive that help. And the Sangha never abandons us. Thay never abandoned us. And that's a profound teaching I learned from Thay. He was there with us in the happiest moment. He was there with us when we experienced violence from outside forces. And never once he neglected us or abandoned us. The Sangha is also on that path, on that journey with us. So if we are indecisive about a decision, give yourself a month, 2 months maximum, and then decide. Going back and forth is so tiring. It's a waste of time. So that's my experience. Because when I was in Plum Village in 2004, should I stay? Should I go? And I say to myself, tomorrow, please go sit down on that ping pong table and write down the advantages and the disadvantages of becoming a nun, of returning home to continue my study. And I decided to stay. I never regretted my decision. And that's a decision that I'm deeply grateful to myself for choosing the spiritual path. If I stay out there, I don't think I will learn as much, help as much, and as my life in Plum Village as a monastic.
Thanks so much for listening. Each week we'll release another interview, so please subscribe, and if you're enjoying the podcast, please help us spread the word. Today's episode is produced and edited by Kenley Neufeld and Brother Nyat An. Music is generously offered to us by Benjamin Portson and Alex Klein. Our special thanks to Sister Boi Nghiem for sitting with me and sharing her story. Meet the Monastics is recorded at Deer Park Monastery, a mindfulness practice center in the Plum Village tradition of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh in Escondido, California, on the traditional and unceded lands of the Kumeyaay Nation, to whom we extend our gratitude and respect. Deer Park offers mindfulness retreats and public days of mindfulness throughout the year, and a 5-year monastic training program for 18 to 35-year-olds. If you're interested in visiting, check out our website, deerparkmonastery.org, or follow us on social media. I'm Brother Min An. See you next week.